Welcome to Life in the Pit, a podcast about the lives and adventures of instrumentalists within the wonderful world of musical theater. And now, here is your host, David Lane.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Life in the Pit, episode 74. And also, welcome back. It's been a couple of months, at least, since we last had a podcast episode. And I did enjoy my time off, but it's also good to be back with you. And just a few things about Life in the Pit going forward that I'll go ahead and mention. As I said on episode 73, the episodes that are out there right now are not going anywhere, and there's a lot of really a lot of content for this very niche subject. But also, I'm still going to be recording new episodes, but I don't think that I can commit to telling you how often that will be. It'll probably, on the average, be about once a month. And there may be some months I get in two. There may be some months that I don't get in any. I will try to always let you know, several days in advance on our Instagram and Facebook pages for sure when there will be another episode. A large reason for that, I mean, there's actually several reasons for that, but one big reason is something I'm probably going to talk more about on the next episode of the podcast, but that is that I am developing a new podcast. All I'll say right now is that I'm very excited about the new podcast, and that it will be a little bit more broad than this one. It will not just be talking about something as kind of niche as pit musicians, but it will be music related, and it's one that I think most of you will enjoy. So I'll be giving you more information about that next week, and also there'll be more information to follow after that. Something that I probably won't launch until January. I'm trying to take a good bit of time to develop it before the first episode's launch. But I will also say, that once it does launch, I don't have any immediate plans to discontinue Life in the Pit. If anything, this will become more niche than it has been. And actually, like looking ahead next week, we're going to have a guest that's not solely a pit musician. She has a topic that will affect pit musicians. But it's the type of episode that once my new podcast launches, that one would go there. The type of episode we have today, though, is the kind that will stay on Life in the Pit. And that is, we are talking about the pit. We are talking about pit musicians. And my guest today is Marci Shegogue, who has played keyboard or music directed or both for at least a dozen theaters in the D.C., Maryland area. And she's also the resident music director for the Free Range Humans, which is a professional adult immersive theater company in Frederick, Maryland. She's been there since 2018. She has a ton of ongoing projects, but the one that we're going to talk the most about today is that she is the managing director, board president, and music mentor and supervisor for the Free Theater, which is a student-led theater company in Silver Spring, Maryland. And it's something that she started also in 2018. And I thought that would be a fascinating thing to talk about because she is a music director, she is a keyboardist, but she also is experiencing the side on the admin side of a theater and running it, and can give, I think, most of us who don't know anything about it an insight into what goes into decisions such as how much to pay the musicians, which shows have a pit and which shows don't. These are questions that Marci can help answer for us because she's had to ask them many times herself. So without any further delay, here's my conversation with Marci Shegogue. It's my pleasure today to be chatting with Marci Shegogue. Marci, thank you for chatting with me today. How are you today?
I'm doing okay. It's a lovely day.
Yes, and well, let's just start with that. Where are you located, and did you grow up there, or did you move from somewhere else?
I am located in Germantown, Maryland, which is about half an hour out of DC, north of DC. And I was born in New Jersey, right outside of New York. Moved here when I was 10 to this area, and have kind of stayed in the same, I don't know, 30 miles, going to college at University of Maryland, and just stayed in the same area. When I got married, we moved a little bit north of where I grew up, and have stayed here ever since.
Right.
And I just found out the other day that Germantown is the second most diverse most diverse city in the country.
Right. Wow.
Behind Jersey City.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, I've been to DC probably at least 4 or 5 times, and it sounds to me like if you live anywhere, I guess between, I don't know, not Richmond. What's the town on 95? Is it Fredericksburg? It's like if you're like if you're like Fredericksburg, North Virginia, or like anywhere along like I-64 or 81, I can't remember which one it is, and or if you're in Maryland where there's not mountains, you're pretty much considered to be the DC area. Would that be kind of accurate?
Yeah, I think we have a 495 goes around DC.
Right.
So anything kind of like spoking off of 495 or on 95 between like, you start getting into Baltimore as you get higher up, but I'm further from 95, but a spoke off of 495.
Right. Nice.
So it has a pretty big reach. I've driven to Fredericksburg. It's about an hour and a half from where I live. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess it stretches about 2 hours either direction. Probably my guess. Yeah,
but I hear like the Northern Virginia, Maryland, DC area, and this actually, as far as getting around, I can't think of anywhere I'm more eager to use public transit than DC. It's like every time I use the metro, it's just, of course, it's been a while, so things change, but I've always enjoyed the experience. I always thought it was, just a very good system.
You can get anywhere, and it's sometimes it's not the most safe place.
Right.
Other times it's just in certain areas it's fine. In certain areas you kind of don't want to go that direction. But people live throughout the entire area, so the metro is a really good way to get around, especially to see theater, because there's so much theater downtown in DC that there's no parking.
Right.
So if you want to go see a show, you've got to hop on the metro, hop on a trolley, take an Uber. There's a lot of
And the first time I took my wife there, we discovered a few things. First of all, Sunday morning is a great time to tour DC. It's like there's hardly any traffic out, and most things are still open. It's like we didn't have to wait on anything. The one place we wanted to go to that there wasn't a metro stop, reasonably close by, was the Kennedy Center. But every 15 minutes they have a free shuttle going from that stop, So
that whole area, like the whole Georgetown area, which is a wonderful, vibrant shopping, theater, restaurant area, there's no direct access to metro. So yeah, you can walk it. I mean, I've walked it. You stop at like Foggy Bottom and you walk the half a mile or whatever it is. It's not too far to walk. It's just not. Right. That's not my favorite walk, but you can do it.
Right. So I do want to come back and get some biographical information in just a moment. But since we're talking about the DC area, what would be your general impression of theater in the DC area?
DC, it is an extremely vibrant community. There are so many different variations and levels of theater. So, and I've worked in most of them, I guess. You've got regional theater, you've got professional theater, you've got small independent kind of indie theaters that are doing experimental work and doing some really cool improv and black box new works and lots of different creations. You've got youth theater where you've got teenagers that are doing anything from community theater to professional level theater, musicals, dramas, comedies, improv. There's a ton of community theaters. So like if somebody was new to the area, I would refer them to different community theaters and say touch base with those places. And a lot of times, it used to be a long time ago that because I grew up in this area doing theater.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be that you identified with a community theater, that's where you kind of were. You did all your shows there. But with actors, transportation being better and shows being so varied, you've got people that are not staying at one theater. They're working in so many theaters. So I'll be working in one theater a little bit north of me, and then working with the same person down in Northern Virginia a week later. Or there's the colleges, the community colleges have theater. All of the high schools, every high school has a theater program, which is amazing. I'm not sure. I know Northern Virginia and Maryland, definitely. DC, there's some that have theaters, some that don't, depending on resources. But there's cabarets going up constantly, and theater. There's a really awesome theater called Monumental Theater, which is millennials, basically. It was formed by 20-somethings, and that's where their core group is. And they put on professional theater, paid theater. So, and then you've got signature theater and only theater, and you've got dinner theater. You can get a job anywhere, but there's always somewhere to go see theater, at least.
Right. Well, that's nice to put it in perspective of the entire area. I have heard before, and again, things change, but I have heard in the past that DC itself has quite a wide range between like what a pit musician can expect to make monetarily. Like you've got a few professional that pay well. Obviously they probably show at like Ford's Theater and and maybe Kennedy Center, but everywhere else was kind of a step above volunteer. And so we might come back to that, but yeah,
for sure. That's the issue. There's so many. There's such a variety. And when I help people find musicians, I have been working here for so long that I know a lot of musicians and people, and played a lot of pits and with different people. So, and friends of mine know that. So they call me, or they say, do you know a guitarist? Do you know a drummer? Do you know? And I say, the first thing I ask is, what are you paying?
Right.
And they're like, well, why would you ask that? I said, because I've got people that will work for nothing, that just want to do it because they love it and it's a side job and it's something fun. And I've got people that will turn down a job if it's under $100 a service. So, and not that all of them deserve the money. All of them are professionals. All of them work hard. All of them have, some have more skills than others. Some have more training than others. They all deserve to be paid, but but theaters are just not. It really depends on budget. I'm learning so much about that.
Right, exactly. Right, and we'll come back to that. So for Life in the Pit listeners, if your voice sounds at all familiar, you have been a past sort of. Well, I think it was enough not to call you just a cameo guest, but you were one of our participants in the Ask the Director of Music series that we had back in, I think it was like Christmas, New Year, going from 2020 to 2021 or something like that. So,
you're right,
and that was very helpful. I think most of the questions came from about 4 different people, one of them who asked about 9 questions, and he knows who he is. But I thought they were all very good questions, and I enjoyed hearing just the variety of answers, so. Those are still on the scroll for, I think, Apple and Spotify, all the podcast platforms. I would encourage anybody to come to just scroll back through and find those if you want to check those out. But let's talk about you. So how did you get, how did you get started in music, and at what point did you decide that this was something you wanted to do professionally?
It's an interesting story. It's kind of lots of twists and turns, but I'll do the short version.
Okay.
I started studying music when I was 7, I think. I started playing piano, and I just loved it. It just was something I did. But I discovered, later in life, one of the things that I had going for me in terms of an accompanist or music director was that I could sight read anything. So I didn't find it hard to learn a piece. I can't memorize things. I'm not real good at that, but I am good at sight reading whatever's put in front of me. So, and I just love theater. My family's always been, my dad has done community theater and managed theaters for years, just as a side fun thing to do. So I started just kind of, I was around theater all the time. And so as I went through, I actually played for my second grade play when I was, I played for the standard little dances for Thanksgiving play. I ended up playing for Hansel and Gretel, and I played piano for whatever teachers realized that I could play, and I would just play. So at 9 and at 7 and 9 and whatever, I started playing piano for school, my school. And then as I got older and I started doing some more in middle school and talent shows and whatever, my brothers became actors. And so as they got into more things, the family got into more things. And so I was asked to play for a community theater show in a pit when I was 13, because they were doing they were the leads in Oliver at Rockville Music Theater, sorry. Right. And so that theater's celebrating 50 years shortly. So we started working in Rockville Music Theater as a family. So all of us and I was the one in the pit kind of playing piano for rehearsals, playing piano for people that wanted to practice a song or whatever, at the age of 13. And as I started to get more involved, I ended up I was a very shy person, so piano was like the place I hid behind. It was great. Right. But I worked up the courage to ask my high school drama teacher if I could play in the pit at my high school, and that's where I started. So I ended up being the person that played in the pit, and then being mentored by some incredible people that gave me chances to do things that the average high school student wouldn't be able to do. They recommended me for gigs and for jobs. And so I started playing for, cabarets when I was 17 and just started getting involved. But the interesting thing is I went away to college. Well, I went to University of Maryland. I wanted to study music. I didn't. I really wanted to go to Berklee School of Music in Boston, and I still don't remember why I didn't apply, or it's probably money related or whatever. Because it was the only place in the country at the time that I knew of as a kid that offered musical theater accompanying. Right. The only place that I could get that degree, and I didn't go. So I went to Maryland. I studied computers. I studied communication. And then I worked up the courage to approach the college drama department that my brother was in, and things. And they were like, sure, we can't put you in the pit because we have grad students playing, but you could be on stage in the Cabaret Kit Kat Club band. Oh, okay. So me not being the actor, not wanting to be on stage, was up on a platform in the middle of the stage in an orange boa and playing the band. And it kind of went on from there. But I didn't study I didn't study music. I tried. I actually didn't do well at piano because they wanted me to play jazz piano. I'm not a jazz pianist. Right. So that was all they offered. So I ended up coming out of college and going into the workforce as an editor, as a graphic designer, did a bunch of different things. And I found my way back to it. So I still played piano for random community theaters as I had time, but working 9 to 5 job, and it was a lot. But I started finding my way back and playing for some community theater, playing for some friends, stepping in. And when I had my first kid, who's now 25, I quit my job and I was like, what do I want to do? And they ended up going to a Gymboree class, and I was like, okay, I'll take you to Gymboree. And when I was there, I went, I could do this. I could teach it. So I ended up, that started 20 years of me teaching music and to children and teaching instruments and just taking that. And as I got to the point where my kids both went off to elementary school, I went, I want to do this again. This is what I want to do. And I started searching out places where I could play. And I kind of went full circle back to doing it full time. So I'm back I went just playing professional theater and playing community and playing whatever I could play, cabarets for people, and making money at music directing, which was my true passion that I had stopped.
Right.
So I came back to it, but now I'm in a situation where I'm more focused on back to the educational aspect of it.
Right.
And music directing, but training music directors, which is something that I feel I'm training high school music directors as kind of giving back to where I started, and giving them the opportunity to learn. And they're going on and doing things. And so I feel like, okay, I found where I'm supposed to be.
Right.
But it's, through several careers and children and, and everything like that. But I think you always have, if you have that passion in you, you can't help but come back to it, right?
That's true. I was just thinking, about your story about what, not having a chance to study music. And I was, as you were doing that, I was thinking about, there are questions that I've asked of new pit musicians, and also when people that I know are recommending new pit musicians. And I do ask quite a few questions, but I've never once asked, where did they study music? Like what's their degree in? It's like I think when you're in school, you might make a bigger deal out of that than you think. I mean, it kind of rubs me the wrong way when I'm around people and they want to talk about their master's degree in theater or in music or something like that. And I'm like, that's fine, but what have you done for work, and are you reliable, and can you play well? And those are the things that are more important. And they told me that I studied film scoring for my master's degree, and they were pretty clear early on. Nobody in Hollywood will ever ask about your degree.
Well, and that's the tough part. I look at job listings sometimes now, and it says must have a bachelor's in music, must have a master's in music, and I look at the pay that they're offering for that degree,
right?
A minimum wage or higher, a little higher.
Oh, yeah.
But I also think about the fact that a lot of people most of the people that I've met that have those degrees,
mm-hmm.
they've got talent. They may not have talent. They may not have the skill needed for a specific job, like you said.
Right.
Whereas somebody might have an incredible degree and they can play, beautiful concertos and be able to sight read classical music, but when you come down to putting them in front of singers, mm-hmm. they don't have that same skill. Some of them do, some of them don't.
Yeah.
I find that experience means something. Study is certain, depending on what you study and who you study with, means something.
Yeah.
But all of it contributes to you being able to do a job. So you're right. I don't know. I may not know all of the terminology needed to explain something, but I know personally how to communicate an idea of how I want something to sound. So I can't tell a singer from a pedagogical standpoint how to do something, but I can describe how the body mechanics can contribute to how they are singing.
Well, your qualifications to me would be in this, fairly small print CV of all the shows that you've done, over the past few decades. So to me, that would be all I need to know. It's like, because if I was concerned, I could probably, call these theaters and I would know that I would get positive response because you've done several shows with the same theater and they wouldn't keep asking you back.
Right.
So to me, that's the most powerful tool for your pit musician is to get all the experience you can and make good impressions while you do it. And
well, that's the most important thing. I think when I was doing during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, and my company couldn't do shows with free theater, and so we did we did a Zoom 16-week workshop, and I chose to do a music director workshop, and I taught 6 kids. But what the cool part is I went on the theater music director and professional music director Facebook page that we frequent, and I just asked if there was anybody willing to come talk to them on Zoom. So it could be from anywhere. And I got 16 different people from all over the world, from all different types of music directing and pit work, to talk to my kids. But what was interesting is they all had wonderful things to impart. But the thread that ran through it, and the kids told me afterwards what they got from all of these people, was kindness. Be the kindest person in the room. Be the person that is willing to help and support and build relationships and communicate. Be that person. And the skill is secondary. Like, if you can be that person, then you can make the magic happen. You can make it work.
Right.
But if you can't be kind, you're not being asked back. So you can't change the world. You can't make a difference because your eyes are not open to what else is in the room. And I think the fact that my kids took that away from 16 different people, and that was the thread that they all talked about, was being willing to communicate and work together and listen. And so to me, that's the most important part. Like you said, you're going to be asked back to do more work, but you're not going to be asked back if you create a toxic environment. So it's that I think is the key overall.
Right. You mentioned the free theater, so I thought that'd be a good next thing to talk about. So At some point, it looks like around 2018, you decided to start your own company. So talk about what led to that decision, and what were some challenges in getting that started?
Well, it was an interesting time that I was part of a group of people that actually was wanting to start it. We came out of another company that was disbanding, and we had 11 senior kids in the company they were becoming seniors, and they were upset that they were not wanted to have senior theater. So the kids talked and said, what can we do? And there were several adults in the mix, and we said, what do you want to do? And they want to have a theater company. Okay. This particular group of kids had a lot of resources. They went to a lot of the wealthier schools in the area, and they had a lot of resources through their parents, through friends, through family, to help to start something. So we started something, and I was the adult in the room playing music. And there was a small board of directors that helped to support it. But I was the one in the room with the kids all the time. We met once a week. We started doing Mamma Mia was the show we did. We had connections. We had ways to do this. And we wanted to create, these kids, as they started to talk about, they want to create theater that is accessible, that we have a lot of pay to play in this area, a lot.
Right.
Some of them they offer scholarships. They're wonderful companies. I've participated in many of the work, and I think that they're wonderful. But we didn't have a place that kids could go tuition free and be the people at the helm of the collaborative of the creative effort. So letting the kids do the work. So we started out. A year went by. The person that was in charge said, "This isn't working. They're not doing what they're supposed to do," and I disagreed and said, I think they just need some training. So can we provide training and build them up? And the people that I was working with said, absolutely not. And I said, I believe in this. And they, through a series of events, it ended up in my lap. So they said, you think you can do it? Do it. And I'm like, I know I can do it. So, and 4 years later, I've got, I still have we had 50 people audition. We started training them right at that point, and like with people from the area that are in the business, directors and choreographers, and music directors and musicians, lighting, sound, tech, people all came and said, I want to help. And they came in and they started helping us to build the program by training the kids and saying, let's do an intensive. I'm going to teach you. And then they stayed on as mentors. So we pay them as teachers. And then they come on as mentors on a volunteer basis. So they can be accessed at any point by these kids who can call and say, hey, I need to set up a rehearsal. I don't know how to do this. And they will walk them through, or they'll come in and they'll help. But yesterday we started Footloose. It was our 8th show. And I have 16 leaders that have been trained in lighting design, sound design, scenic design, directing, choreography, you name it. It's all, they do the work.
Right.
And so they have to create presentations. They have to apply for the job. And they have to do presentations based on what their vision is and how they're going to implement things and how they're going to work with a budget of 0 and that kind of thing. Like where can they source costumes? Where can they source props? And we're very fortunate to have the connections that we have through my colleagues and friends, and through our production manager's colleagues and friends, and our old production manager and our board. And we have a lot of resources to bring to the kids to support them, but they're doing the work. So my job is to be there every Sunday. I play the piano because I don't have anybody at that level of being able to accompany a rehearsal yet, but I'm not the music director. The music director is a 17-year-old high school girl who I've taught. So she's doing all of the prep work and all the organization and all the teaching. So, and I did a specific leadership training course for them this summer, like a retreat. And we talked about teams and collaboration and creativity and kindness and all the things that go into being into a good leader. And they're all the ones in charge. What's nice about it is I feel really strongly about it because it is tuition free. We don't charge for anything, which is hard, which means the money coming in is we completely exist on grants, donations. I write all the grants, which is a whole other, hat that I've never written grants before. And I started grant writing, and I've gotten money, like, bits and pieces here and there. We do GoFundMe's and all kinds of things. We do cabarets where we ask for donations, and then ticket sales, which is the smallest amount right now because audiences are tough. Right. So we've survived. This year we're a little down on money. So I put in for 3 grants I'm waiting on, but each year I cross my fingers and I say, but there's a reason that this is in place. There's a reason that I believe so much in this program. I watch these kids. The last show we did was completely student run, 100%. I had students in the pit. I paid high school students to play in a pit. And they rose to the occasion. Everyone in the kids built the set. The kids sourced the costumes and created the props or sourced the props. And thankfully, I have an art center, Black Rock Center for the Arts, right up the road from me that is willing to. We always have to find a place and pay the money for rehearsals and performances. And we've had some great people, but Black Rock came to me and said, "We want you here," and gave me a deal that I couldn't refuse. So we are in a beautiful theater space, rehearsing on the stage where we're going to perform. And in a black box theater, and just do it, helping us every step of the way, which is I'm so incredibly grateful for. We've had some wonderful people, but I think I couldn't do it without the resources of our area. Like, I don't think I could do this in an area that's not creatively theater arts driven. And this is a very vibrant arts area. So I have access. I can call. I had Nova Payton, who is an incredible local. Well, I guess she's regional, but and she travels all over. But she's an incredible artist in this area. She's starring Color Purple at Signature right now, and just blowing the roof off. She's an incredible voice. But she came and did a masterclass and volunteered her time. So it's like there's local talent that's coming in that's helping us, like Nova. But the kids see the potential of being able to do theater professionally. Right. And some of them will do it, and some of them will go study it in college, and some of it are just like, this is just my people. I just want to be here, and I'm going to study business, Right. but what's great is because of the diversity in this area, the socioeconomic diversity, the racial diversity, the just everything in this area, being able to provide a service that lets kids come in no matter what.
Right.
And they have to audition, they have to fill out applications and the whole thing, but we find a place. Whether they're the person, they may be somebody that does the photography or the marketing. Our whole marketing team is students. So they do all the work, except for I'm president of the board as well, because that's where I fell into it.
Right.
But and managing director and music supervisor. But having all those hats creates a bigger picture for me in terms of how the company needs to run. And
right. Well,
as much as I can hand off.
That's wonderful. You mentioned grant writing and you mentioned quite a few things. What would you say are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned from this whole experience that maybe has transformed how you feel as a music director and pit musician in other situations?
The biggest lesson, I guess, patience, flexibility,
right?
Communication. I've learned how to articulate what I want in order to get what we need. I mean, it's I've learned. I think I've also learned how to draw on resources and who to talk to. And like I talked about before, like being the shy child, know, and coming in and having music and theater be the thing that pushed me to have a voice, I guess, in a lot of ways. I feel like I've just learned to be resourceful, to not shy away from opportunity.
Right.
When someone starts talking to me about wanting to support the arts, and I'm like, I've got stuff you can.
Right.
I've got some great opportunities for you. But I'm not. I am somebody who doesn't like to ask for money. Like I get really nervous. So I've learned how to use my voice to ask for, like with the grants.
Right.
I'm not a grant writer. I never learned how to be a grant writer. I took some courses through some of the places that offer grants, and I started to write. And I remember writing my first grant, and it was a big one. It was like a 20-page project.
Right.
Financial. I also have to do the treasury stuff right now, so I'm in charge of the money too. So I had to figure out how to write a profit and loss statement, and and take all of that, add it to a narrative, add it to the budget, and add it to, everything, and all the marketing, and put it all together into a package and turn it in. And I gave it to a friend who writes grants, and I said, "Can you look it over?" And she looked it over, and she says, "You're missing something." I'm like, "What? I've got 20 pages of stuff here." And she went, "You're missing the heart. Like, you're missing the part where you are passionate about it, and you are passionate about it." And I'm like, so I went back and rewrote the narrative from the point of view of being passionate about it, which I am, and did not get the grant, but I had all the info in there.
Right.
So it was a good practice. I've gotten all my other grants I've been able to do, which is really helpful. But that was a good practice for understanding how to impart what I wanted, I guess.
Well, I would also think that, your experience has given you kind of insight that I think a lot of music directors don't get the opportunity to experience. And that's just on, the other side of the curtain when it comes to administration. It's like, I think most music directors know you get this certain budget. Here's where you can see how many instruments you need for the show and all that. And, you may be self-sufficient as far as contracting. You may be hiring the musicians and on behalf of the theater and all that. But in terms of like how boards determine budget, just also like all the other roles that go on, from stage managing to directing, it seems like you've had an inside look at that. And you also participated in a conversation, earlier this year, on one of the Facebook groups you mentioned, just talking about theater the rates that theater musicians get, especially if it's not a union paying gig. And what are some insights you've learned from being someone who has to pay the musicians, of kind of realities of this, of, I guess, amateur theater? We'll just say that for starter.
Yeah. I guess the reality is that you have a certain amount of money.
Right.
And it's like, or you don't. Like, at this point, I have a certain amount of money, but I don't have the money for the next show. So, I'm waiting on money for that. Hopefully, with my grants will come through. But I look at that and go, I have to take that amount of money and split it up between all of the categories. And it's pretty cut and dry when you look at it. I mean, I know some places are more complicated than others, but you need a performance space, you need a rehearsal space, you need to pay your you pay any staff that is working. There's only, in my company, there's 2 staff, and I'm one of them. But when times get tight, I cut my salary off and I pay my other staff because it's just how it is.
Right.
Either I pay for things or I don't. So I can thankfully afford. I'm not the sole breadwinner of my family, so I can afford to forego it for a couple months if I have to.
Right.
So you have to buy you have to buy insurance, and you have to there's some admin costs associated with Zoom subscriptions, and and if you have to make copies of things for students, or we bought T-shirts, but that was a donation, I think, so that doesn't really count. But there's categories, and the categories are pretty much the same across the board for most theaters. So what you have to pay, and orchestra being one of them, I feel very strongly about making sure that number stays at a good point. But I look at the rest of it and I say, well, this year our costume budget is 0, because I know that I have 3 different places that are willing to loan us costumes, and we can borrow without cost. So the kids come and say, what's our costume budget? What can I go buy? And I'm like, here are your 3 places. You can get everything from those 3 places. Our props budget, also 0. But the whole point is, when I go through, my rehearsal space is the minimum that I could possibly make it. Like I have cut that down, and it has cut down because we have the Black Rock, which is awesome. Our performance space, that is the most expensive, I think. But thankfully, again, we have a really amazing partnership right now. So those numbers I took down to the nth degree. So when I look at the budget, it's not like, $3,000. It's like $2,592, because I know exactly what it is, or whatever. So I whittle it all down, and I'm trying to keep it. I try to keep it to about $18,000 a show, which is not a lot of money to put on a show. Right. The rights are the rights.
Yes.
I think actually that's our biggest expense right now, is the rights. There's no cutting that, right? So I've got the rights, I've got the space for rehearsal, and the space for performance. That eats up 90% of my budget.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do about that. Like, that's just the cost of putting on a show. And those are at minimum. I mean, other than the rights, the others are at minimum levels. And then I'm like, okay, scenic budget. We have some wood in the shop. Like, we're going to make use of that. Let's look at what we've got. And I've got wonderful mentors who are like, oh, so-and-so is having a sale. I think they're willing to donate a bunch of wood. Great, let's go get it. Or we go to Home Depot and get $20 of wood or whatever. Or not $20, but but I look at that and go, keep our scenic costs have to, I give them a tiny budget. So everyone's got a tiny budget. But when it comes down to it, the 3 top costs, there's nothing I can do. That's what they are. They just are what they are. So I know that. And that's from my administrative point of view, I'm not going to bargain down the rights cost. It's just not going to happen. Right. I can bargain the rest. But then but the orchestra, to me, is important to pay. And if I'm bringing professionals in, they're going to get paid. When I have a mix of professionals and students, I pay them all. My goal in the long run is to do a pit training class, pit training workshop for students, hopefully this spring. It's been in the works for a while, but then COVID killed it. Exactly. Nobody's playing instruments, it was like, that was it. But I have done a lot of subbing, music class subbing in the local school system and have met a lot of student musicians.
Right.
I run a Facebook group for music teachers and subs for Montgomery County. So I have access to teachers and I have access to students through the teachers. And we talk all the time about students being at a really amazing level. They play every day. Some of these kids are extreme talents that are going to study music, but now they could play it. They could play a pit. Like they could come in and play. I have a student who's playing, who's a reed doubler who can, if I'm a school in Virginia, who's going to play in my next show. He plays 5 instruments. It's like, it's rare, right?
Yeah.
But I have those. So I know people that know people that know people, bring them all together. And I'm hoping to have a pit training so they become part of the company. And then I don't necessarily have to pay them because it's part of the learning. It's part of the learning experience, and they get basically free training. And then the end goal is the show. But because I'm not doing that right now, I am paying them at a decent price. But so when I look at the budget, we were talking about, like, I look at the budget and I'm like, I have $18,000. 12,000 of it's already taken. Like now I have to figure out, and then actually no, more like 18,000 with staff and stuff like that. So what do I have left? And I look at my orchestra and I'm like, okay, I need 5 musicians. And I will not pay them less than $40 a service. And how many services, what's the max, what's the minimum services I can do? But with kids, I can't cut them down. I'm not going to cut them down. They need more time, and it's the way it is. So I'm like, okay, we've got 10 services, including like sits and a rehearsal and 3 days of tech and 4 shows. We got 10 services, and I want to pay them $40 an hour. So it's going to be $400.
Yeah.
And how many $400 can I put in the pit? I don't pay myself. So I have, I can do 5 musicians. Yay. I have, then I've got to find 2,000.
Right.
And thankfully I have it. Right. But it's a whole balancing act. So I want to pay them more. I want to pay, in this area, we're talking about scale, people from 0 to, I've paid in my circles, I've paid 110 a service is the max that I've ever paid anybody. But it ranges even in the same place. It can range from 50 to 110 a service, depending on the show and the time of year and whatever. But it is the budget. There's nothing.
Right.
And because I know when I look at it and say, I don't have money for sound equipment. So do I buy the sound? Do I rent the sound equipment and not pay the musicians, which I'm not going to do because that's important to me. So I put the money into the orchestra budget. And find the grant for the sound. Right. So that's, or go find a donation, like go and, but the orchestra to me is sacred. And I'm like, I will pay them. And if I have to go back to my friends and the students and say, I can only do 35 this time, but next time I'm going to, the next show I have that pays more money, you're first on my list, so it's a difficult position because I know that if I were to pay them what I feel like they're worth, we wouldn't have a show. I wouldn't have a place. We'd be doing it on Zoom. That's right. Which is hard. So
what, so you're working on Footloose. What's your pit for Footloose?
My pit for Footloose right now, I have all students. I think I'm looking for a guitarist, but I have a lot of kids that are like, oh, my friend plays guitar. And I'm like, okay. And then my assistant music director came to me yesterday and said, I play guitar. And I'm like, you play guitar? And he goes, I do. I play guitar. And I said, all right, well, if I give you the score to look at, can you tell me if you can play guitar? And she was like, sure, send it to me. I can do this. But she's leadership, so I wouldn't pay her because she's part of the leadership team. Like I can't pay the team. So that saves me one musician. But and she wants the job so bad. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed. But I
Right.
I have my reed doubler, the same kid from, I just did Urinetown, and he's the same kid from there. He'll be a senior this year. I have a drummer who's also a senior, plays professional theater in the area already. So that's easy. Like,
Right.
and he happens to be dating the music director. So that's even better. So there's, that was easy to get. So drums, reeds, my bass player is somebody who I've been working with since he was in high school, but he's out of college now. He graduated with a music degree. There's somebody with a music degree. There you go.
Right.
He plays, I don't know. He played a show for me where he played 12 different instruments. So, but his main instrument is bass, so he's playing bass. I'm on the keys, and I have a second keyboardist who is so that's 5. That's 6. I have a second keyboardist who I just played a show with, and he just graduated high school, is at a local college, and was excited about coming back. I trained him how to use MainStage, so I told him, I'm like, I have my computer, I have my MainStage set up. I'm gonna, I'm sponsoring the cost of the program, of programming, because one of my friends does it, and so I'm paying for that. But we're gonna put that in. So keys 1, keys 2. I don't pay myself, so keys 1, keys 2, bass, reed doubler, drums, and it'll be a guitarist. So 6. And out of those, I don't pay myself for that, and I won't pay the guitarist if it's the person already in the company. So I'm paying for 4,
Right.
which is good. So my budget is $2,000, but I'm hoping if I only have 4, then I will take I would pay them more, but I've skimped on everything else that I'm like, I can take the extra 400 and put it into someplace else, like put it into sound, which if we don't get the grant is going to be important to do. So, cause we don't have microphones, but we need them. So, so it'll be 6 people in the pit, 4 will be paid. And it's important. I feel like in teaching these kids the value of the musicianship. Yeah. It's the value of their skill. And so and honestly, I'll tell you one more thing with that is several years back, I got blasted on Facebook for mentioning in that group, I believe, for mentioning that I hire high school students and pay them. Because professional musicians who I work with, who are extremely valuable and extremely talented, were saying that that's not fair to say that high school students are at their level. And I'm like, I did not say they were at your level.
Right.
The idea was that they're capable of playing for a show at the level that I expect, of the expectation. They're not going to be as good as someone who's taken years and years and years of training and has tons and tons of equipment and is extremely talented. And I admire and respect that level of professionalism. I think it's when you make your whole life, into music, and you deserve to be paid for all of the money you put in and all of the time. And, but when it comes down to it, if I can afford you, great, that's awesome. But if I can't afford you, I can pull in a high school musician who can do well enough. Yeah. And I like giving those opportunities when I can. Right. I feel like it, because if you take that student musician who is like, I don't know, what am I going to do with this? And you say, here's a pit job. You're going to get paid for it. You get to play music for 2 weeks, and it's awesome. And you're going to, making music with people is just the best, right? It's the best. They get that experience and they go, I want to do more of this. Where can I get training? Where can I go? And you've just fueled that flame. And to me, that's important too. Is I want to give work to the people that are professionals, right? And keep them going in what their passion is, and build up the ones that are just starting out, so that they can continue. So it's it's my personal perspective.
I think it's a wonderful situation, and it's also just very educational and enlightening, and just understanding what goes into a show, especially when you don't have an unlimited budget, and just the experiences that you're giving the high school kids. And so I guess we just have a few minutes left. One question I did want to ask about, in regards to education, you've done a Broadway teachers workshop. It looks like 5 different years. You've studied with people like Tom Kitt, Josh Rhodes, David Loud, Kim Grigsby, and others. And just what kind of things go on there, and what have you really taken from those workshops?
Oh my gosh, that workshop is run by Pam Pariseau and Gordon Greenberg, who are big big theater names and music names up in New York, and they started this workshop, and it was the first time that I was like, I want to go to this. It's a 3-day workshop, and they have it every year. It's still going. I haven't been able to go the last couple of years. They had it virtually. I went to the virtual one, but what's great about it is they have connections with all kinds of people, and so they bring in people, guest artists, or they bring in people to come talk about their experiences and how they got to where they were, what their passions are, what they want to do next, where they came from. And the people that sign up are a lot of they're drama teachers and music directors and in youth theater for the most part. And so we come all over the world, which is so cool, getting to meet all these people. That's my favorite part, I think, is meeting people from like Australia and India and China and all over the United States that are doing the same kind of thing I'm doing, where I'm working with youth theater. So we talk about budgets and all these other things and problems that arise in schools and youth theater. But they bring in these professionals that come in to talk to the teachers about, like, here are some of the things that this is where I started. My drama teacher, recommended me for this program or whatever, and then I auditioned for Broadway. And but some of the things they talk about about how people got into things, but they also have guests that come in and talk about how music is created and how just from the very basics of how to create props or how to create costumes on a budget or things like that, which are really helpful for teachers. But my favorite parts, I guess, are learning from people like Tom Kitt and Josh Rhodes and Kim Grigsby, and Pam and Gordon bring these people in to kind of offer some. There's a lot of different things, but for the most part, my favorite part is when they talk about how they create what they do, what goes into the creation of their work. And Josh Rhodes, I remember, talked about, and as part of the workshop, you go see 4 performances for shows. So one of the years I went, I got to see Cinderella, which was incredible. And Josh Rhodes had done the choreography, and he described, he led a choreography class. So we all got to dance some of the dances from Cinderella, which was cool. But one of the things he talked about with creating choreography was how it tells the story. And I never thought about it that way. I was like, it's a dance, right? They're dancing. This is dancing. But from a professional choreographer's standpoint, he was like, it tells the story. And so he was talking about how Cinderella and the prince run opposite sides of the stage, and they start to make their way toward each other, kind of like West Side Story kind of idea, right? Mm-hmm. And he had circles going on the stage. And so he asked about, like, we had seen the show, and he's like, so what do you think about the circles? And we're like, oh, they're so beautiful, that circles of people dancing. And he says, did you notice how, like, Cinderella and the prince both got caught in the cogs of the circles, and they circled together? And that was like, oh, how cool is that? Like, it was part of the story. So, and Tom Kitt talking about creating music. At the time, I think he was creating SpongeBob, and it was a secret, like, couldn't talk about what show it was, whatever. But I think that's what had happened at the time. And he was talking about creating the layers of music and just like starting out with this theme and then adding this theme on top because it means this, and then adding another thing, and until you get this multi-layered complex composition that every part of it meant something. And why he put certain songs into certain themes into certain instruments, and how they related to character. And so it became, for the drama teachers, it was like, oh, that's very cool, right? But for me as a musician, I went, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Wow.
So the works, so they've done a lot of really cool things. They allow you to be part of they some of them, I think there was a conducting workshop. There was
Right.
on the only other thing I remember was working with the woman who was in charge of the kids in Matilda. She was the music director for the kids in
Right.
Matilda. And my favorite takeaway from her was she talked about how she taught them, she would teach the kids Happy Birthday as an audition song. And I'm like, I use it all the time. Happy birthday. When people don't bring music, right? Just sing happy birthday. And she's like, no, she used it to show emotion. So she was like, the kids would come in, have these prepared songs. Great. And then she'd say, sing happy birthday. And they'd sing happy birthday. But she's like, I want you to sing it in, when you're as an angry person. I want you to sing it. And then she would change the key or change the tempo or change it to a minor key.
Right.
As she did that, she could get a lot more from their voices. So those are the types of things I take away from these people that are coming in, that it's not just the, how did you get here? What was your avenue to stardom kind of thing, but more about the art and that.
Right.
So that's what I've taken away from them, and met tons of friends and learned about theater in the Midwest. And,
Nice.
And in areas that are very different than mine. So very cool group.
Nice.
They do it every summer.
Well, there is so much more that we could talk about, but I think we're gonna end the conversation here. Where can people, follow you if you'd like to share that, and definitely where can they find out more about your projects like the free theater and so forth? Where can people follow that information?
For me personally, I don't have a website because I get word of mouth. I never created a website for myself. It's constantly changing. But I do. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. But through free theater, there's a lot of my projects are there right now. I'm doing a lot of high school theater right now and some community stuff. So, but for free theater, it's www.thefreetheater.org. Theater with an R-E.
Right. Okay.
So
Great.
so there's that. And then, and we're also on Instagram as The Free Theater. That's where you can follow what's mainly happening in my life right now.
Okay.
But otherwise, I also have a group called Marci's List, MARCI ''S list,
Right.
which is helping people connect with other theater and music professionals. I list gigs on there. I get a lot of gigs thrown at me and like need to be filled, and I can't do them all. And so I have people are posting on it. I'm posting on it. It's about 200 people on it right now, which is great. I just started it a couple months ago,
Right.
but it was a place that when someone says, hey, do you know any musicians? And I'm like, give me the info and I'll put it on, rather than calling all of my friends,
And is this mostly for the Maryland, D.C. area?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
It's pretty much Maryland, D.C. If it's something else, I usually post it on my regular Facebook page and just say, hey, New York friends or Philly
Right.
friends, or whatever. But the area ones, it's mostly the D.C. metro area for musicians, theater things, all kinds of I guess it's like education, theater, music.
Right.
Opportunities, and hopefully I'm matching people up. I'm making sure that everything gets put in there so they can contact immediately and make it work.
Right.
So,
Okay. Well, that sounds great. So thank you for taking time to chat with me today.
sure. Thanks for asking. I always love talking about what I do.
And that wraps up episode 74. And I just also want to thank our sponsor, Fonz, which is a billing and scheduling platform that I have been using for several months and am really getting quite a bit out of it. I find it very helpful for my teaching business, and it's something that you can use even if it's for martial arts or for yoga or for anything that's you meeting up with the client where you can control the rate and you can control the policies. There's a link for you to get a free trial in the show notes, and I would definitely highly encourage you to do that if that suits your business model. And We will be back in a couple of weeks with episode 75, so watch out for information about that. As a reminder, if you want to follow what's coming up next, be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at Life in the Pit Pod. You can follow me on Instagram at David Lane Music or Twitter and Facebook at David M. Lane Music. And as always, a special thanks to Mark Perello for his cover art and to Bill Cisna for providing the introduction to this podcast. The theme music is composed and performed by David Lane. You can find out more about this podcast or leave feedback at lifeinthepitpod.com. Please rate and review on the Apple Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts, and please share with your friends. Thank you for listening.